Good evening to all. Today we will be actually discussing about the baseline survey for the CSR, how we are taking up and going for the baseline survey, and when we are going, what is the exact time period, and what can be the limitations for the baseline survey, and how exactly it is actually giving the timeline that whether we are ahead of or we are lagging around whenever we are doing any of the CSR activities. So, based on that particular segment, we have a very much eminent speaker who is with us today. Welcome, Meghnadi, in our today's session. And she is heading one of the very leading startup which is working for the skilled workforce. And of course, the name of that particular organization itself is SWAN, that is Skilled Workforce Advancing Nations. She is working for this particular segmentation wherein she is training people in and around and also building the capacity of all those people, those who are working for either the CSR projects or, of course, the social development sector. She had been into working for last, you can say, 2 years or so in this particular segment. She is very much nicely actually taking up internship also for various other colleges and various other schools. So, not taking much of the time, I request Meghnadi to start her presentation or start her sessions, and I will be also joining her in the later stages. Thank you, and over to you, madam.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Pradeep, sir, for the warm invitation. Good evening, everyone. So we will try to make this session to be interactive once again. So let's just try to participate in all the questions that we come up with. So I'll just start by sharing my screen. Give me a moment. So can you see my screen?
Yeah, we can.
All right, great. So I'll just start with the basic definition of what baseline surveys are. So it's the study that is done at the beginning of any project to collect information about the subject that we are researching upon. And the purpose of doing baseline survey is to, to be able to make precise decisions on the project that we are going to start. And the baseline survey, the information that we collect from the baseline survey also acts as a benchmark for measuring the success or the failure of the project based on the insights of, the activities that we are going to carry out. So now what does the survey aim at? So basically, the survey aims at identifying the purpose of the entire project. Okay, so it is like a decision making tool which helps you to dig deeper into the information that you are going to collect from ground. So why is it that you are doing it? What is it that you are doing it? What kind of information that you are going to collect? How is this information that you're going to collect be helpful for the other stakeholders like the policymakers in bringing about policy level changes, or maybe for the stakeholders, the CSR funding bodies who are actually looking for some kind of an innovation in the existing project to be carried out. So before we actually get into the methods of the baseline assessments, let us just have a quick interaction amongst ourselves as to what are some of the baseline methods that we use in order to carry out our research. So because all of us, I am assuming over here, are researchers, very experienced people. They have good amount of experience working and executing various projects, so they might have worked at some point or the other in designing baseline survey for their work. So can we hear from some of the people who are some of our participants who are present over here on what are the methods that they generally use in order to carry out their baseline survey? Or maybe what are the methods that they prefer using, and what are the kind of limitations that they see when they are conducting baseline surveys for their projects? So anyone?
If I can join in and I can contribute on this discussion, usually how I go for a baseline survey is we take on the metrics for what exactly we have planned beforehand. Okay. And based on the timeliners of that particular thing and what is the target for that particular activity within the time frame of 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, or 5 years. So based on those activities, we are preparing as a questionnaire actually. Here also again what we are doing is usually within the time frame of 3 months, it is to be procured. Suppose something is to be procured within timeline of 3 months or 6 months. That needs to be procured. Whether it's been procured or not, we are following that particular guideline, or what is the hurdle in regard to that? Suppose is there any procurement segmentation which has been lacking behind, or the funding is the lacking criteria on that, or management is not supporting on that, or even like during COVID-19, something was stuck up during the transportation because of the transportation. So that can be some of the ways. So based on those things, we are actually formulating our baseline service. How procurement is being affected by this particular segment. If I am talking about the procurement for that particular CSR activity. So this is how we are actually collecting all those questionnaires for the baseline survey. Based on the timeliners and based on the target-based activities, which we are actually forecasting for that after 6 months or so, this will be achieved. And if it is not, then during the baseline survey, actually we came to know about that this was the lacuna, this was the things which are running behind. Because of this, we are behind. That is why that is the way out for baseline service. Usually, what we do actually.
Thank you, sir. I think that was really insightful. Anyone else? Anyone else who would like to share as to how is it that they go about working on the baseline service for their projects? We have a lot of participants. There's nothing right, there's nothing wrong. Anything that you would like to share based on any kind of study that you might have conducted before. So I also see Shreya in the participant list. Because Shreya had asked some questions in the initial session. So Shreya, would you like to share your insights on how is it that you go about collecting baseline surveys for your work?
So as in like what do you want me to, what can you just repeat? I just lost your voice. Can you just
Yeah. So my question is, when you are starting with any work, how do you collect the baseline information? How do you know that, what are the questions for which you are going to answer?
So yeah. So basically, when I start with my work, what comes to my mind is that, if I'm doing this, how is it going to be impactful? So I would say why, how, and when would be the right time. But mostly the most triggering point where I get stuck is, I know why am I doing it ultimately, but how am I going to present? Okay, I can ask, but when is the right time to do it? And how do I do my R&D on these things? Like, so that's a time, like how do we convert surveys, or how do we get through the actual questions with the answers what we want? So the main basic challenge is it's easier in the tech world to get a survey form filled, but there are a lot of other things which are there today. One person can fill 10 survey forms and you don't even come to know that the person has genuinely filled it or not. Like we all fill so many forms every day we receive. So what is the filtration process? Like we get those leads, but how do we filter the leads? Okay. And how do we know that this is relevant? Is something which comes to my mind when you ask me this.
Yeah, I think this is a very relevant question that you have asked, because at times we land up collecting so much information from the field that eventually when we are analyzing the data, we get lost ourselves on the question as to what are the things that would be most relevant and what are the things that would be relevant from the stakeholders' point of view. And when we are talking about stakeholders, then stakeholders also involve different stakeholders. So we have policy makers, we have academicians, we have funding bodies. So looking into various point of views so that the entire vision of your project aligns, and you are also able to bring about a considerable amount of change in the form of how differently you are executing the project and the kind of impact that would make on ground. So I think that was really insightful. Thank you, Shreya, for sharing. Anyone else? Okay, in case anyone is facing any kind of network issue, feel free to write in the chat box. Okay, so just give me a moment, I'll move over to, yeah. So, like we just had a discussion on the methods of baseline survey, and we got really, good insights in terms of, various information, like filtration process. How do we go about collecting the information? How is the information processed? Pradeep sir also shared that, he goes about assessing the time frame and also the activities that would be carried out on field. So approaching a project can take in the form of various angles, and also various ways in which we can look into one project. On one hand, we can have displayers like canopies and also banners in order to conduct some kind of a interview, or maybe if you want people to come to you in order to inquire the kind of work that you are going to start in the community, or it could be in the form of a group discussion, FGD. It could also be a door-to-door survey when you are collecting the information, and the base point or the benchmark of the same can be done through the qualitative data, which can be gathered through the literature reviews. So we will discuss all of this one by one. So like, Shreya mentioned, the biggest question is to know what, how, why, and also when is the right time. Okay. So if you want to seek answers to why and how, okay, so why are you doing the project? Or maybe if you're going on field, then why is it that you are collecting the information? And how is it that you are going to, collect the information? Then qualitative methods are an effective way in understanding the process. Okay, so before starting any work, it's always good to do some kind of a literature review that would help you in understanding the demographics, the socio-cultural context around the area that you are going to start working on. Also, it will help you in analyzing the population from the perspective of various other researchers who have already done some kind of a work in that particular location. Okay, so that will help you in gaining some clarity on your question regarding how is it that you can start with your first step of going on field, or maybe why is it that you want to choose only this location to start your project of research. Then designing the qualitative impact assessments. So once we are clear on why is it that we are starting with a project in one particular location, and how is it that we are going to execute it based on the prior literature, or maybe the reports that have been published by various bodies, the next way could be to understanding the demographics, census data of that particular location. Community overview, because at times what happens is that we go to the community, but then when we go to the community, we find some kind of a disconnect or initial hesitation, wherein people are not really willing to share the information with us. So in that case, when you are collecting the data, there might be some kind of biases in your data, in your baseline data. So it's whenever you are going for whenever you are going to on field to collect any kind of data, it's always good to have a prior understanding about the community that you are going to cater to, because the more connected you are to the community, the better insights you will gain in terms of the questions that you have framed for in order to execute your research work in that particular community. Also, at times we observe that due to difference in the mother tongue language, or due to language barriers, it becomes difficult for us to communicate to people who might have a lot to share. So it is always good to do some kind of a recording of that session when you are having an interaction with them, which can later be translated, or maybe have translators along with you who can help you out in gaining insights on exactly what is it that the person is trying to communicate. But regarding all of this, you will get to know more insights when you actually go through the literature review or the reports that have been published by the people who have already visited that place once or twice before. Then gathering data in terms of the age group of the people, then the socio-economic conditions that exist in that particular area. Also proposing sampling focus on impact assessment. So basically, what is your sample or the information that you are going to collect based on the questions that you have formulated? What is your sample going to focus on, or maybe what is your target audience that you are catering to, or maybe what are those set of questions that you plan to ask them? So focusing on the set of questions and structuring your assessments so that you are able to prepare a guidance sheet for yourself, which will give you a stepwise clarity on the kind of information that you are going to collect when you actually go on field, is something that can be really helpful for you in terms of assessing the qualitative data. Also planning of how a quality survey should be made is something that can be figured out while reading, or maybe while gathering information from secondary resources. Then one very important term that comes over here is rapid rural assessment, which I'm sure many of you might already know, because most of you have been working on ground. So it is a method, it is a very commonly used qualitative assessment method, which helps to seek and gather information from the respondents, and it is all, I mean, so basically it helps you in using simple techniques to gather detailed information about a particular information. And usually when the data is to be collected on a very short notice, and if there is a very large sample that you need to collect, then usually rapid rural assessment is one such method that if you use, you might get precise answers, because the type of techniques that you use are are framed in a manner which helps you in getting in touch with a larger group of audience over a short period of time. And if you seek detailed questions, you try to ask them questions, very precise but detailed questions in and around, in and around the research that you are trying to carry out. You might end up getting, insights that might be useful to conduct your research, or could be a benchmark to start with your research. The second method that comes is participatory rural appraisal. And over here in the participatory rural appraisal, um, this method is generally conducted in groups. Okay, and over here there would be, you would see that there would be a skilled worker who would, gather a lot of people together and will give them insights, try to tell them about the work that they are doing, and in turn try to seek answers from that person, from the group of people, in terms of the problems that they are facing at the moment. So over here also, the overall objective is to gain insights from the field, from the people who are living at the ground level. And also try this method also helps you in in facilitating a dialogue between the entire community, when the community gathers together to seek a collective response on what are the problems that they are facing in general. Okay, so these are the two methods that are generally used when we talk about the qualitative method of impact assessment. Now moving over to understanding the what, where, and when. Okay, so now that we are clear on how is it that we are going to start with our baseline work once we are on field, or maybe once we have got questions on the answers on what would be the first step after we are done doing our literature review, after we are done knowing the demography of the place that we would be looking into. The next part that comes is to understanding where exactly are we going to start from. Okay, what would be that first village that we are going to cover, or when would be the right time to go for the survey. So when we try to understand questions wherein more details are required, we generally use quantitative method for assessing any kind of survey. And also so we use quantitative method in order to find out the data points from where we are going to start with our research work once we are on field. So one such quantitative method is household surveys, which forms a very useful method to collect data points based on the individual population, and also when we try to look into the demographics of the entire family. So when we talk about designing a quantitative impact assessment for our work, it could start from defining, it could start with a very simple way of defining a sample method. So just imagine that all of you are on field at the moment. Okay, so what are the sample methods that you generally use to collect the information at the ground level? So over here, can some of you respond as to how is it that you collect your data once you are on field, or what is your sampling method when you are collecting data from field?
It's good. Meghna ji, you are covering for that PRIA. Let me give you an insight how usually we do it when we go to the village areas. Across younger generation, what we are doing is we are creating a timeline that is for giving them some of the variables. Just if I quote here what can be the variables for the younger generation is one variable can be the income, second can be the expenditure pattern, third can be the savings, fourth can be the assets whatever they have purchased, fifth can be kinds of work what they are doing, and hours of work what how they are doing it, and then the social grouping, that is how, and then the recreation. How and what we are doing is exactly is we are asking to the students there actually, those who are younger generations, that before employment, what was the condition of you or how you are looking out for that income. So usually all the responders respond that we don't have any income on such because we are not employed. On the expenditure pattern, they are also saying that our expenditure is more on food and the clothings and not on other things. If I go for the savings, they said that if you don't have an income, there is no such saving, of course. And if they don't have an income or the savings, they don't have an assets too. During the college days, before the employment, we usually go for playing, enjoying with friends, going to whatever the hobbies we have actually, or within the college groups we are enjoying. And usually once we are not working as an employed person, we work for 12 hours or so. Our close groups are our only friends and relatives. That's it. And very oftenly we go for a recreation. But here, if you see the trend change after employment, how it actually happens. Okay, after employment, seriously, there will be an adequate amount of income with you. You will be purchasing some of the assets. You will be having some of the savings and in terms of bank accounts, in terms of mutual funds, in terms of post office savings. Likewise, you might be having 2-wheelers, 4-wheelers, or multiple role you are playing in your offices, outside your offices. Even you started working for more than 12 hours or more than 18 hours. Some of the people are working up to 18 hours in a day. So that is how the trend changes are there. And if I see how people are mingling up with the people, others, usually they are not at all going with the friends. Now, friends have been replaced with the co-workers. So that is how, and very frequently, they are going for the recreations. So these are the some of the trend changing pattern. If you go with the PRIs, even in younger generation also. So this is the one set of tool actually where we are defining what exactly the before the employment, what was that particular structure working on, and how we are going for that, and after employment, how we are going for. I'm taking just a consideration of the employment here because we are very much relevant to this actually. We all can relate up with this. Likewise, once we are doing this baseline survey in rural areas, we are relating to the people. Yesterday also, Madam was asking how we are relating this income generation towards the people, those who are working for that. So these are the relevant actually variables by which we can actually come in and actually go for the baseline survey. That is how the PRI is working always. It's a very simplistic method or mode where I am asking for the individuals, okay, tell me about your, आप 9 बजे क्या करते हो, फिर 12 बजे क्या करते हो, फिर 3 बजे क्या करते हो, 6 बजे क्या करते हो. Likewise, we collect data from all the house members, households. And जब उसका compilation करते हैं तो there is a different structure coming in. कि कुछ लोग ऐसे हैं जो बिल्कुल काम नहीं कर रहे हैं, कुछ लोग हैं जो काम कर रहे हैं. And by that only actually we are taking a relevant data कि किस जगह पे हमें काम करना है, किस जगह पे हम काम कर सकते हैं. इस छोटी सी चीज से कि how many people are working, how many people are not working, how many women are actually looking out for this particular work to do, or they are going for training. So this particular segmentation, this particular survey, a small data survey, that is very much simplistic data, actually gives a data how to go for the development of that particular village or development of that particular society or the city. So that is how the PRI is working. So others can also come in, but I am working in this sector, so I know how the PRI and how the PRI groups are working for this.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
you can proceed. You can proceed.
That is really insightful. Anyone else? we want the session to be more interactive. So the more you share, the better the discussion would be. Okay, so Vani has written in the chat that there are some difficulties. So Vani, would you like to unmute yourself, and also would you like to share the kind of difficulties that you face while conducting baseline survey?
I think when I wrote, you have already explained how to overcome the difficulties, how to face the language problems and everything. That's
Okay.
what I meant. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. All right. So, so my next question to all of you would be, so what is the most preferred way of collecting baseline data? How do you collect the baseline data? Do you use questionnaires? Do you use, recording methods? Do you use FGDs? What is the method that is most commonly used by all of you? Would anyone like to share?
Usually once you are working with social development sector, or usually once you are working in rural area, questionnaire actually don't go with that. Why? Because people don't understand about the questions. If you ask them in a story form, right, they will tell you. But if you ask them in a questionnaire, they will say, "हमें ये नहीं करना." So better to go with the explanatory stories and take out all the answers which I, or all the need actually, or whatever the things you are trying to take out from that particular survey. Try to take it out by those stories. That can be the best way, because rural people, they are not at all going with the questionnaire. Questionnaire, agar aapne unko paklaya, they will not respond. You will not get any single data on that. Better, there are two methods. See, previously what people used to do is in their schools or in the Anganwadis, usually all the researchers, they keep on sitting in that particular places and keep on actually keep on eyeing on those activities, how the things are going on. And based on those activities, now they are preparing the data. Earlier, it was the scenario how the data is being actually taken away by those rural areas. Nowadays, people are more actually, I must say, tech savvy, or they are looking that I should go, or my photographs would come, or my videos would come. Better to go and ask them the stories. How many, if you are into the cooperative society, or if you are into dairy farming and all, how many people are there who are working for dairy farming? How many women are working, those who are working for IT sector things? How many women are working for Kadai and all? So that story actually builds up, it gives you the data rather than going for a questionnaire in rural areas. And if at all you are going for a questionnaire, don't give it to them. उससे खुद पूछिए, फिर आप क्वेश्चन उनसे पूछिए और उनका आंसर आप खुद ही लिखिए. If you are going and giving it to them and you will ask them to fill it up, you will never get any of the data out of it. So better to go with the explanatory stories.
Very
Even
true.
in CSR, we are doing the same.
Yeah, I think you have very rightly shared your insights.
I would like to say something.
Yes.
Yes, yeah. So basically, with whatever Pradeep sir says, it's like you have to go down to their level, show the interest in their work, and then you try to serve your purpose in their own language, in their own way. Then you will get the answers, because written, if you go towards these people, they will not read and write, they will throw your paper away. Right? Yeah. But if we are doing survey with the companies and all, then it's very different processes. That's
Yes.
what I think.
Yes, I think very true.
Yeah, I would like to agree with what has been mentioned here. And as a dentist, I would say I face a lot of problems regarding surveys. Because if I am doing a survey related to tobacco usage in the population, the male members are usually making fun of me. that ये देखो ये कौन आई है, ये देखो tobacco survey कर रही है. I mean, if I tell them that tobacco causes cancer, it is a big joke to them. There have been so many times when I'm conducting a screening program, I'm conducting a dental camp over there, and people are sitting right there and they are busy with their hookahs and beedies, and convincing them is a huge task. And similarly, if I talk about general health, if I try to ask women about their menstrual health or anything regarding to that, they're too shy to even express what they feel about it, let alone write or fill up a questionnaire. They don't feel very free to talk about, even if it is a female to female talk. It makes me, I have to make a lot of efforts from my end to make them understand this, that it's okay to talk to me as a woman regarding their menstrual health and all. So that definitely, as a health worker, I find it very difficult. Thank
I
you.
think these are really nice insights that you have shared, Dr. Mandakini. We also have some questions in the chat that are coming up. Nitish says on ground surveys with various stakeholders. Nitish, would you like to unmute yourself and explain your point?
Yeah, good evening, ma'am. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, actually, my point of reference is that whenever we want to conduct a survey, we first need to check out who's our beneficiaries or who are the stakeholders, so that we can know about them and directly approach to them with the required questionnaire, whatever we have designed questionnaire as per our requirements, like what, how, when, where, which process we are following, and then get the answer, and then accordingly we design the further roadmap. So that is the my point. Yeah.
Yes, very true, because once you have assessed who is it that you would be catering to, or who are the people whom you are going to interact with, so that you get proper insights from them, those form your starting points to start with your research. So thank you so much for sharing your insights. Shreya has asked how to decide sample size. Shreya, this was my next question, and you have already asked that. So my next question to everyone is, what is the sample size that you collect when you are generally, starting with your research, or maybe when you are going on field to do any kind of
Meghna, I had one more thing to add on. Like if we select a sample size, like usually how do we target it? Like, as I said, Dr. I don't know, I'm not able to read her name, but yeah, Madani, who just said that she has women who are there and other people. So in that case, how do we know the age group? How do we know the gender? And on what basis are these sample size done? So sampling. And the second question, what I want to type is like, what are the types of surveys we can do, which directly or indirectly impact the effectiveness of the survey? So these two things are which I would like to know.
Okay. So, all right, we will cover your point, Shreya. Very relevant questions that you have asked. But before we actually get into the details, would anyone of you like to share your general sample size, as in, what is your general sample size that you collect when you go on field? Okay, no one wants to answer this question.
Shall I come in?
Okay.
See, I will answer for both the questions which Shreya has asked actually. Shreya, whenever we are going for any of the survey, what we do is usually we try to go with a close contact with the municipal corporations or officers of those particular area first. By that, actually, we get the demographic design of either the city or the town or the rural. And that particular demographic design, that is by the DM office or by the municipal corporation or by the pradhans of that area, we get the sample size of to whom we are going to actually go for the survey. That is, and from there we have to first curate how many women are there, how many working women are there, what gender specifications are there, whether larger number of male are there or whether larger number of females are there, how children are there, what can be the how many people are there, those who are dropouts, and how many people those who are employed and unemployed. The very first instance, actually, whenever we go for a survey, we take the help of these government bodies and other cooperative bodies or municipal corporations or those which are working through the government agencies for that particular area. By that we get the demography. Now comes the question of what can be the sample size for those. Suppose if you take this school, usually all schools are having 120 to 130 children in their schools, usually in an area, in a particular village. Okay. So out of those 130 students, if you go for somewhere 30 to 35 number of students for a sample size, then you can very well say that, okay, you have taken the data out of 100, that 110 or 100, 100 of students, that 35% you have taken the data. And by that 35% actually, you will be getting something which is actually relevant to that particular area, usually. But what happens is this 35% somewhere is not giving the insight. So people usually goes down towards 50% or 70%. 70% we are never achieving, but 50% we can achieve. In school area, we can achieve. In this thing, rural areas, that is villages, somewhere we are trying to do. What we are doing is, when we go for the sampling of the villages, what we do is we try to take a survey either from the male member of that particular family, one male member and one female member of that particular family. By that, we are getting the sampling of that 50% notion, or at least one representative of each of the family members. Suppose there are 250 members, there are 250 families residing in that particular area. So 250 into 4, we take on that 1,000 people, or totally people are residing there. But there again, we are going for 250 people, at least those who are actually heading that particular families. That is why I am saying that we are going for 35 to 40%, usually. Of course, if we get the, like Mandakini said, that if we go for a 50% people to come into the survey, we get a better insights on that. Of course, it is like such only, but usually we are not getting it. All the male members or either the female members are coming up for those surveys. That is how, up to now, I got at least 35 to 40% people, those who are coming to the survey. My experience as of now.
Thank you so much, Pradeep sir, for your insights. And there is another question from Shreya. What type of questions, I think baseline surveys is preferred? Is it open-ended questions or close-ended questions? And over here, I would like to, connect it to the point which Dr. Mandakini shared, and also which you shared in terms of, making a connect with the target audience. So while close-ended questions help you in gaining answers, very precise answers to the information that you are trying to collect, but the open-ended questions help you in collecting stories from field, like Pradeep sir said, and helps you in initiating a conversation around why is it that you are collecting information, and helps you in making a connect with the people. So it entirely depends upon the target audience that you are catering to, and also the kind of connect that you have with the community members. Also, in continuation to what Pradeep sir mentioned, that always taking along municipal bodies or government bodies when you are collecting the data. Apart from that, if you have, or if you are in touch with any community leader or an Anganwadi worker of that particular community, that can be a very useful point for you to get connected to the entire community. Because the community leader or the Anganwadi workers act as the role models, or maybe they are the people who are actually looked upon by the entire community, and the community members actually go to them whenever they face any kind of problems. So you entering as a new person in the community, and spending time to establish that rapport could take time. But if you are able to maintain cordial relationships with the community leaders or the Anganwadi workers over here, that could be your starting point to reaching out to many more people who are a part of the community. And once you interact in the presence of them, you can gain more insights, not just from them, but also from the community members who might open in front of them. Yeah. So that is another point that I would like to add on to the already existing point. So when we are talking about designing the quantitative impact assessments, then apart from the sampling methods, determining the sampling unit, sampling size, the sample frame, also the approach, okay, what would be the method of collecting the sample data from the field, would be some key points that one needs to keep in mind before we are actually starting with the work. And then developing and testing the questionnaires, because whenever we are doing our qualitative study, or maybe when we are doing our secondary study, we have certain notions in our mind, and generally when we go on field, things turn out to be completely different. So how are you continuously evolving your questions? How are you continuously innovating or reframing your questions that will help you in designing a framework that can be actually implementable on ground? Because generally what we observe that whatever we read, whatever we find on books or maybe in journals, there is a high likely chance that the scenario might be different when you actually go on field, and it could be due to various reasons. One very big reason that you can observe could be the pandemic situation. So the situations that were prevailing prior to the pandemic time, and the situations that now exist post pandemic times, are completely different. Yeah. So how do you reframe your questions? How do you continuously develop and test your questions? By the information that you collect on ground, which would actually determine the kind of or the efficacy of your entire research that you are planning to do around the work that you are proposing. And once you are clear on your sampling methods, once you are very precise on the kind of sample unit, the sample size, also the kind of questions that you are going to ask to the community, also once you go and collect the information and data from them and share it with your stakeholders, then the next step for you to also comes that you start thinking about the enumerators who would be involved in carrying out your project in general. Because when you start with your project, you might require field workers, you might require trainers, you might require people who are working on ground, you might require data analysts. So what are the kind of people that you would require who will help you in actually executing that project or your research in the best possible way, is something that would also come under the quantitative impact assessment. And lastly, before we come to a closure to this session, this is a template for the terms of reference of a baseline assessment that has been shared by Food and Agriculture Organization. So they have shared a standard format which all of you can definitely refer to and can modify based on your requirement of your project. So a typical template would have project program details, which would have, the agency who is implementing it, the main implementing agencies, matlab your organization, the main implementing agencies, then who are the donors, what would be the duration, what kind of budget do you require. Then context, over here you need to be very clear on, the qualitative aspect, as in why is it that you are starting with the project, what is your project aims at, what is the institutional arrangement like, a detailed description about the activities that you are going to carry out, also demographics in terms of the target population, the project area, the sample size, the sample unit, all of that you need to mention in the context, so that it becomes clear to the person or to the funding body on why is it that you want to start with this research, and how is it that the research is going to impact or have an impact in the society in general. Then the next part comes is the main objectives and expected impact. So over here you need to, describe your medium and long term objectives of carrying out the project, and how is it that you are planning to scale up once you have started off. And also you need to mention about the geographical zones, the demographic, the socio-economic background of that particular area, also the participants detail, the number of the male versus female ratio, everything you need to mention over here. Then the next comes the approach. So over here you need to mention whether so what is your approach of carrying out your study, which could have the qualitative aspect, which could have the quantitative aspect, or it could also have a mix method, okay, wherein you are using a mix of both qualitative and quantitative methods. So how are you approaching, what are the steps that you have defined for your research work? You need to be very clear on your approach. Then the next comes scope and methodology, and over here you need to write about your desk review, wherein your prior research, if you have done any on this particular area or any previous area, and also your sampling, as in how is it that you are going to justify your sampling methodology, and what would be your sample size, where would be the location, and whether it is going to be only females or a mix of male and female both, so gender aspect as well. So once you are done defining the sample size, you need to mention about the indicators. And when we are mentioning about the indicators, you need to be clear on what are the indicators that will help you in getting precise information from the field, or how is it that you are sure that the data that you have collected from the field is accurate and not biased. So what are some of the indicators, measures that you have kept in your mind while you are conducting your research, so that you get an unbiased data, is something that you need to mention in the indicators part. Then field work, wherein you give a detailed explanation about the stories that you have collected from field, the insights that you have got from the field. Also the data points can come in the form of graphs, pie charts, which would have an overview of the sample size and also the population that you have covered. So a detailed insight upon your understanding of the research that you collected on field will come under field work. Then comes the analysis and reporting part, wherein it would be your insights on how, based on what you read and also what you found out on ground, what are some of the innovations that you can bring in through your work, or maybe through your design or your framework, that will make your project work to be unique than what the others have carried out. And the more interesting this part becomes, the more unique your research, or maybe the more appealing it becomes to the stakeholders who are funding you, because they want to know what is the new innovation that you are bringing in the project, which you want to start implementing on ground, which nobody else is doing. Okay, so after an analysis, we will have time frame wherein you should be clear about the time frame of the activities that would be carried out, a budget, a proposed budget, after taking into consideration the enumerators that you are going to involve, who will help you in carrying out your study and also your further research. Also requirement of the staff members, if any. Budget will also include things like infrastructure and other things. Data collection, key tools that are used for data collection. It could be recorders, so it could be anything based on the nature of work that you are trying to implement. And the last would be the requirement of the staff. So staff requirement that would include the people who are going to help you in carrying out the study based on your area of interest, and also the kind of experts that you want to have in for your particular research. So this is like a general template that I thought of sharing, so that the entire flow becomes clear for you, and so that it also helps you in streamlining uh, the entire information that gets collected once we come back from the field to write our reports. So with this, we come to an end to today's session, and I will be happy to answer any kind of questions if anyone has.
Yeah, has asked one of the question, or someone has asked, I think, that open-ended question when should be there and when the closed-ended question should be there. I need to add there, of course. See, whenever we are doing anything specifically which is generic in nature, that can go as an open-ended, because if that is an open-ended, we get some of the struggles or some of the struggle stories out of it. But if it is a survey which is a very much domain specific, that has to be a close-ended questions, because others responders don't know about those things. So if I give you the example, how or which can be these open-ended questions or surveys. If we are doing a survey for school or dropouts, that can be a open-ended, because there are so many reasons behind the school dropouts that we need to take on for the consideration. That is why we are going for an open-ended questions. Likewise, if a non-institutional delivery is there in any of the area, any town, any city, so we go on, we take on those answers or the responses to the responders. Likewise, if there is a lack of access to any of the health services, or if there is a lack of resources in that particular area, we have to be very much open towards the responders, so that we can get more and more responses out of that, so that we can get the better insights about how to go for a study and what is to be actually done, or what is the particular need of those particular area, or how we can plan out for that particular project or CSR. Now, if I take the case of the close-ended questions, why? Because close-ended is the domain-specific questions. If something is to be made, we require engineers to work on. So if infrastructure specialization is there, suppose a metro is to be escalated there in particular regions, so we have to be very much specific in that particular area. So the research of that particular questionnaire will be very much closed-ended. That will be having very much relevant answers or responses towards that, but that will be a closed one. Likewise, if there are some of the gray areas, if we talk about the this thing, environment issues, or if we talk about the garbage disposal. Usually, generally people don't know about these issues and the way out to actually address these issues. So if they don't know about the way outs, we need to give only the options, that is the close-ended options. By those close-ended options, we have to create our report for that. So based on this particular structure, whether that survey is for the domain specific or domain specific reasons, it is there, or whether it is for a generic reasons. Suppose if you are going for an Aadhaar card or users of the banks or how the banks are helping you out, you can go very well as an open-ended questions. But if you take about the server, how the bank's servers are working, that is a domain specific. IT people can only answer on those things. So that has to be very much specifically close-ended questions with narrowing the options also. So that is how whenever we are preparing any of the questions. Thanks. Any other queries, please let me know so that I can respond or Meghna madam can respond. I don't feel. Thanks, Meghna ji, for your today's session. Usually when we do this baseline survey, this is pre-preparation of CSR proposals. Remember, after implementation of the proposal, again we go for the baseline survey. Okay, so but once this is a pre-proposal survey, it is called as a need assessment. But during the project, if it is there, this is called as a baseline survey. Usually, PRIA, there is no such need assessment and baseline. We are not doing likewise. We are saying that it is a need assessment. That's it. Baseline, we are talking why? Because we are going towards the people, those who are really beneficiary out of this particular survey, and those the responders, those who are at the bottom of the benefit, I must say. That is why we are actually giving it or mentioning it as a baseline survey, so that whatever the impediments, whatever be the culture in our rural area or baseline people, we can get on to that. That is how. So, Meghna ji, someone is asking, Ms. Meghna, and for this technique, what would be your sample size? What is Nitish has asked some of the question.
So usually, because our work looks into empowering youth coming from the economically weaker sections of the society, we generally aim at maintaining a cordial relations with not just the children but also their parents. So door-to-door survey works very well in our case, because in that case we are able to instill a very good conversation and maintain a healthy relationship with the entire community members. So generally my sample size is 100 to 200, because when I collect 100 to 200 data samples, then I get clear understanding on the kind of problems that exist, and that helps me in innovating frameworks which will help in bridging the gaps between the community members, that the gaps that are existing based on the project that I am executing. So I generally tend to collect a sample size of over 100 to 200 to come to any kind of a conclusion regarding the framework that I'm going to implement for my work.
Just adding on to Meghna ji's answer, actually, if you go and see how police department is working for the survey, what they are doing is during the elections, they are doing this survey specifically. They are asking the male member of each of the family to come and sit with their in their offices. Okay, what they are doing is there in that particular survey. It's a survey actually. It's been recorded survey in the police department. They are actually framing out how exactly the threat can be there among election areas. And they are asking all the members to come in. Every fortnightly, they are asking 10 of the members to come and sit with them. That is on Chai Pe Charcha, and all those things are carrying on through the police department during the election time. They are doing it. So they are asking one member from each of the family to come in, speak with them, and by that they are taking the survey. So usually what I referred previously also, that we require at least one member from each of the family to respond on those surveys. Then only we get the better idea about how and what to go. That 4 Ws can be answered only when we have at least one member who can respond from each of the families. But I think I might have answered Nitish's query by this. Thank you. So, thank you, Meghaji. Any other queries, or shall I close for the day? I think we can close for the day. Mandakini ji, anything left out from your side? Nothing, I think. Thanks to all, and thanks to all those who are present here. We will be sharing our today's video also to you all, and all the presentations will be shared to you all by the end of this conference, that is 6th of September. Post 6th of September, I will be sharing all the presentations. Thank you to all, and I am ending up the sessions. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.